Marisa, you participated in the both the scholarship committee and the granting committee in 2021. Was that a rewarding experience?
Absolutely. One of the reasons why I'm involved in this organization is because of a passion for helping young filmmakers get their start and supporting projects that maybe wouldn't get a second look at some of the other major festivals. So any way that we can support that, we're definitely interested in doing so. Um, I loved hearing the opinions of other committee members and having the discussions that we did about the proposals we received. And I learned a lot about some of the films that are in the works, not only locally here in the state, but also in the Southwest and even kind of beyond.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you live in Texas, Arizona, Colorado, Oklahoma, the surrounding states, you can apply for up to 2,000. And I think it's such a good thing to be able to have the people in those drivable areas and surrounding states to know that there's support for artists, creative filmmakers happening here in Santa Fe.
Yes.
So let's see. The grant amounts have increased. They opened on the first of the month, and we're accepting applications all the way until the middle of July, end of July, I believe. And so anybody can apply as long as you're a filmmaker. You can't be an organization. You have to be a filmmaker looking for money for a film, and it can be of any length. Do you think? I know one of the things you were interested in is making it accessible to diverse communities and diverse recipients.
Right. So I think through our discussions last year, we kind of reworked some of the program to just ensure that we were thinking about equity and inclusion in all aspects of our decision making. So I'm an educator in higher ed here in Albuquerque, and so I'm always trying to think about or to bring that lens with me into any project I'm involved in. How can we ensure access for historically oppressed or marginalized groups? And what are some ways that we can ensure that we're opening up those opportunities to people who maybe uh, haven't had them in the past and could benefit from them in the current? So I think that's one of the reasons we decided to have two separate granting pools, right? One specifically for New Mexico applicants, and then one to those who come from the Southwest more broadly. And then we're going to be, I think, reworking some of our language, making that commitment to equity and inclusion and access. And so if you are a filmmaker who um, comes from a historically oppressed or marginalized group, I think sometimes there's a tendency to not say that like verbally or to not express that in an application. And I totally understand, as a woman of color, you never know who is going to be on the other end of that granting committee and how they're going to receive that information. And so it can be kind of like very tenuous territory to navigate. Like, should I go ahead and say that as a woman of color, I am committed to film projects that bring to light women of color's experiences? Um, and sometimes people might, hesitate from saying that explicitly. I would say that that's something that I value as a reviewer and something that I encourage applicants to express, because we know that there is an issue with representation within the film industry. This has been a conversation that's been coming to light more recently. We've seen actors really saying this blatantly on big stages, right? And kind of saying like, this is something that we really need to turn our eye to. And so the conversation is happening. And if it's happening at the kind of national level, we certainly want to make sure that it's happening at our local level too, and being mindful of that. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's definitely important.
I think that was really good, and yeah, I think I'm glad you brought up your relationship with your students. The hashtag Oscars so white, I think really changed the a lot of dynamics in Hollywood, but especially with the awards season. And so you have a way of connecting with young people and working with young people of all backgrounds. Do you feel like yourself coming from a diverse background allows you to connect in a way with some of these students and say, I'm more similar to you than not, or I've known what it's like to be in your shoes.
That's a good question. So I guess I should say that I teach at CNM. It's a community college in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's actually one of our largest post-secondary schools in New Mexico. We're usually right along the lines of UNM with enrollment. And we have a very diverse student population in terms of race, in terms of age, in terms of sexual orientation, gender, um, religious affiliation, you name it. We get students from all walks of life. One of the reasons being that we are very affordable as a community college. And if you think about the community college mission as being kind of education that is accessible for the greater public, I mean, we draw lots of people from lots of different walks of life, not just young. But I think that for me, it'll be my 10th year teaching at CNM this year, and I think closer to 15, no, 18, 17 something years teaching overall. I can't remember. Whatever 2007 was, that was the first year I taught. Um, I think that students, it's not even about expressing that explicitly. It's like students see you up there in front of the class or in the midst of the class leading a class, and they see, oh wow, here's somebody who maybe looks like me, or here's somebody who's from New Mexico, who grew up in New Mexico, who went through New Mexico public schools like I did, and now they're on the other end teaching me in this, academic space of higher education. And I think there is a lot of value to that. We see in higher ed overall same issues as the Oscar so white. There's not a lot of faculty of color represented nationally in higher ed. At my college, which is a designated Hispanic serving institution and Native Americans and serving institution, our faculty representation is really not on par with our student demographic. And it should be, right? We come from a state where there's a large number of Latino, Latinx people. There's a large Native American population. And why aren't those numbers reflected in our faculty? That's an important question we should be asking. So I think when a student comes into a classroom where they see somebody who has maybe similar lived experiences as them, who's a person of color, it's like there's not even, nothing has to happen. It's just like a gravitation toward, okay, maybe this person is going to get me. Plus, if you approach a student with empathy and kindness, which I try to do with all my students, there's already going to be that openness and that ability to communicate with the instructor. So I don't know if